everyone, welcome to Afro Feminista Vegan. My name is Topaz, and this channel is dedicated to helping women of color start and sustain a healthy vegan lifestyle. Today, we have a special guest. Hello, Kiyyah. Kiyyah is a plant-based coach. She's also a certified health nutrition coach. She helps really anybody go vegan. She is a type 1 diabetic living in Atlanta, so she has a very unique take on health and nutrition. We're really excited to get to know her story today and tune in on this amazing Black vegan. How are you, Kiyyah?
I'm good. I am so good. I'm excited to be here and be able to share my story with everyone and hopefully just inspire more people to jump into this thing head first.
This is exciting. Yeah, that's what we want. So I'm so grateful to have Kiyyah here to share. And I'm going to start jumping into some questions. So Kiyyah, tell us a little bit about where you're from, maybe how old you are, and maybe why you got into a plant-based lifestyle.
Absolutely. My name is Rukiyyah Khan. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. I got into veganism probably about 6 years ago. I didn't have like a solid, clear transition point. So I didn't like say one day I'm vegan, but I slowly transitioned. So I kind of just had some bad food experiences, got some food poisoning, and was just like, something about this doesn't feel right. Like it's not sitting well with me. I had some acne. I started to really just look at what is it that could be causing all of these health issues, because I don't feel like it's normal to live with health issues. And so the more research I did, the more I kind of got led into being more plant-based or more vegan. So originally I went vegan, and it was a whirlwind experience because I also was more of a junk food vegan. So I like to tell people all the time, when you jump into the vegan world, it can be like fun because you're like, oh my God, vegan ice cream. Oh my God, vegan cupcakes. Oh my God, vegan cauliflower wings. And so I kind of went crazy. And my health wasn't, in the forefront at first. And I actually gained weight. I tell people that too. Like when I first went vegan, I gained weight because I wasn't necessarily focused on the health aspect too much. And, I had a lot of fun tasting all vegan things, but a part of me also settled in and was like, okay, let me actually focus on my health. Like what is really the healthiest way for me to live and eat? And that's when I started to be more plant-based, meaning, filling my plate with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. So that's kind of how I transitioned, from being still eating meat and seafood into slowly, being vegan and then being more plant-based. I personally think that plant-based living feels different. I try to explain to people that sometimes you have to, I guess, discipline yourself or use willpower enough to get to a point where you feel different. And then when you feel different, you don't feel tempted to go back. And so when I talk to people about eating meat or eating junk food or even eating fast food and things like that, any of the times I have gone backwards, or when I have my cheat meals even, it's almost like I don't like this feeling. So I'm going to continue on this path because that's what makes me feel the best. And so, when I am coaching people, I kind of encourage them to follow the intuitiveness of your body. Your body will give you signals as to what feels good and what doesn't, what sits right in your system and what doesn't. And over time, you'll experience that usually it's meat and dairy that's not sitting well. For me, if I ate cheese or if I ate ice cream, the next day I would have a breakout on my face. And, to see that correlation so starkly, like one day after the next, I decided that I didn't want that anymore. So, I started to find alternatives and just kind of work it that way until I arrived to being completely plant-based. And I'm happy here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. You know what? I want to dig a little deeper on sort of the symptoms you were experiencing when you were eating meat or junk food veganism, because I think a lot of people that are just starting vegan, they don't really know what to transition to. So they're eating all these fake cheeses and all these fake meats, and they're not noticing that maybe something's off. So maybe could you just talk about a little bit of your symptoms or what you were experiencing when you were eating not so great vegan alternatives and meat?
Yes. When I was eating meat, it was all about digestion for me. So I would eat something and I could feel it sitting in my gut. And it would take maybe 2 to 3 days after, especially a very heavy, meaty meal, to feel like I had passed that particular meal. And so, yeah, my stomach would always feel just iffy about things, almost like not necessarily cramping, but I would definitely feel that my body was struggling to process it or struggling to digest it. And I started to ask myself, was that normal? It just almost asking my body too, like, body, is this normal? Like, is this how it's supposed to feel? Mm-hmm. So that was a thing. Even feminine issues were a thing for me. So constantly battling infections, yeast infections, BV. I felt like that wasn't normal either. I was like, you know, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm active. Like, I don't understand why these issues continue to come up. And I didn't want that either. I'm like, there has to be a better way. And so those were the two main things with eating meat and dairy that made me pay, you know, more close attention to what was going on and just listen to signals from my body. When I got into the junk food vegan world, it was more of an energetic thing. So I would feel sluggish. I would feel like I ate a meal and had to go lay down afterwards. And certain vegan products also would mess with my stomach. Some of the false meats and stuff that was really high in sodium, I would always just feel like, ugh, like, I don't know if there's a word for that, but that's how I would feel. And so I started to really think about, like, what do I want to feel after I consume food? What is the feeling in my body? And then when I would consume foods, I would kind of like list it in my head, like, oh, I ate a smoothie bowl and I feel great. Oh, I ate, you know, pancakes and vegan sausage and I feel, oh, I ate, you know, a bowl of fruit and I feel good. Oh, I ate like, you know, some French fries and I feel, so I kind of started to like pay very close attention to what my body was telling me that way. And it just naturally just led me to what I eat now. But I also tell people too, like, it's okay to not be 100% perfect plant-based. So there's space for, you know, vegan cheese in my life. I still consume vegan cheese about once a week. There's still space for, you know, a vegan burger. If I'm out and about with friends and I know we're going to a pub or a restaurant and they have a Beyond Burger on the menu, like, for me, that's not an end all be all, because I also know that for the most part, I'm fueling my body with what it needs. And there are going to be some days where you're just kind of like stuck, you know. So I also encourage people to kind of have grace with themselves as they transition, to find what you can that's best in that moment so that, you know, you're not hangry, because being hangry doesn't help either. That's going to make you, you know, kind of go back. And so, yeah, just have grace and feel good about what you're putting into your body. And then if you don't feel good, it's always a learning experience. So it's not that you did something bad, it's just that it's a learning experience, and you take that and you say, like, what am I going to do different the next time? So now that I'm mostly plant-based, I'm really in tune with what my body is going to tell me about what I'm putting into it.
Wow, that's super powerful that you're in tune with that process of what your body likes, what it doesn't like, but that you're also kind to yourself. Because at the end of the day, you got to be kind to yourself. There's a lot of things that show up in the vegan diet, and you know, sometimes a Beyond Burger is okay, and sometimes you didn't know some stuff was slipped into your food. You're like, is there butter in this? Oh, I ate half of it. So you really have to be kind to yourself, that your intention to stay vegan and plant-based is good.
Yes, it is definitely not about perfection. I tell people that all the time. Progress, not perfection. Like, we're not trying to be, you know, angel vegans. We're just trying to be the best for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of sounds like you're a lot like me, that you're a health vegan. You're really about the physical benefits. Are you into other kinds of veganism, like animal rights or environment? Where else do you find that veganism has touched a justice topic that you care about?
Absolutely. Another part of my transition, besides just, you know, the feelings in the body and stuff like that, was watching documentaries. And so before What the Health and kind of the more recent ones, I watched Earthlings. I know. And
Earthlings is so bad. It's so painful.
It was such a painful experience for me that sometimes there's things you can't unsee. And I just knew that I was forever changed once I watched Earthlings, and it wasn't an immediate change. I tell people that all the time: watch it, feel it, experience it, and then just start to pay attention to how you move in the world. The way I looked at animals was a little bit different. The way I looked at zoos was a little bit different. The way I looked at aquariums was a little bit different. Just it just flipped like a little bit of my mindset. And that's what started to make me pay more attention to not just, okay, I'm eating this for my health, but also like, this is a bigger, broader thing than I ever even thought about. And for a while, I was pescatarian. You know, I would tell people I'm pescatarian. You know, I don't eat any meat, but I eat fish, and, you know, thinking fish isn't that bad. And then you start to look at overfishing, and that our waters could be completely void of any sea life if we continue on the path that we're on and the rate that we're going. And for me, that was scary. I'm like, fishless oceans, like, what does that even mean? That concept doesn't register with me. So if I can do something, if I can make a small change and dedicate myself to being just a little bit better, why wouldn't I do that? You know, so it did become kind of a moral dilemma where, you know, you say you care about animals and you say you're an animal lover, and, you know, somebody's dog runs up to you, you pet it and you're excited, but then, you know, you're putting these animals on your plate. So then you're like, you know, you feel the push and the pull and the tug. And so that was a thing for me. And then environmentally, of course, you know, there's so much research out there. There's so much data. There's so many ways that the rate at which we are growing, producing, and slaughtering animals is not sustainable. And I was a kid who took environmental science in high school. Like, I was an AP environmental science. So it always mattered to me. And it was interesting because when I look back at AP environmental science, I don't think we ever discussed animal agriculture. We discussed factories, we discussed, you know, all different types of pollution and things like that. But it was when I was an adult that I actually looked at animal agriculture as having some issues and impacts on the environment. And so, yeah, it is for me, plant-based eating is most important, especially for our people when it comes to the health benefits. But I think understanding the whole purpose and the whole worldview is also, it sits in my heart. It makes me feel like, you know, I'm doing my best to be a better person. And if I can do a little bit more each day, then I do feel better about it. So yeah, all of it.
Wow, that's so beautifully said, because there's a lot of layers to that. And
Yeah.
the thing that really gets me the most is that some people don't see it. They have no idea that factory farms are a problem. They don't know about overfishing. Like, even in 2020 with the internet, people don't know. So what are some common misconceptions about veganism that you hear around town from your family, from your friends? Like, what do people just not get? And like, what do they need to know?
Yeah, number one is protein. Number one is always protein. Everyone, anybody that I've approached and I say I don't eat meat, they're like, well, where do you get your protein from? And I think that's always what I start with now, like what I lead with. I get my protein from beans and nuts and vegetables, and the same way that your animals get their protein is how I get my protein. And so that's always the number one misconception for me. And you know, I really do understand it because we live in a society that makes everything about money. And so protein has been a big money maker. And I don't think people look at it like that. Protein powders are, first of all, they're ridiculously expensive, but everybody now feels like they need a protein powder in their lives. So it's being sold, it's a commodity now to sell protein. Or, you know, you'll find packaged snacks on the shelf that's like, now with added protein, oh, 20 grams of protein, oh, this much protein. And it's interesting because before this kind of new age being sold protein, nobody worried about protein. It wasn't something that nobody came to the doctor and was deficient in protein. Like, that's just not something that has ever been the case in human history that I know of. So that will always be number one as far as just dispelling that myth. What other myths? Yeah, I think that's gonna be the one that I settle with.
That is huge. Can we just put the protein thing to an end? Like, we got plenty, okay, fam? We got plenty. There's a lot of protein for plant-based eaters. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Case solved.
Yes.
But I know that your clients are constantly asking questions like that. Hey, Kiyyah, I want to go vegan, but I just don't know. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you became a health coach and maybe why you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was into the coaching world, I was actually in the meal prep world. So I started off as a vegan chef. I worked for a company here that caters for some of the movie sets and stuff like that. So that was kind of like what my job was. And a part of me was like, I can make some money doing this for myself. And so I jumped out and was like, hey guys, I know how to cook. I know how to cook vegan food. Do you want to buy it? And people latched on. And I went from making meals for maybe 2 to 3 people. My biggest week, I made meals for 18 people. Had to buy like another refrigerator, eventually moved into a commercial kitchen, and it was just a lot. It was a lot of cooking, a lot of grocery stores, a lot of everything. And it was a really great experience. But what I realized was that people were dependent on me for living. If I was out of town, if I was out sick, people were texting me like, what am I supposed to eat this week? Like, what am I supposed to do if I don't have your cooking? And something just clicked for me. Like, if I'm giving them the food, selling them the food, I'm making money from it. But if I'm giving them the food, there's something that they're not doing. They're not connecting with it. They're not learning the process. They're not making the connection of how to do this for themselves. And I actually saw a lot of my clients, when I stopped, go back to eating meat. And a part of me was like, something, it just isn't right. Like there's somewhere for me to like fill that gap. And so I started to research like what other career fields exist that kind of help people get to where they want to be when it comes to their eating habits. And health coaching came across my computer screen when I was researching. And it was amazing because I came from an educational background. I have a master's in education. I know how to plan. I know how to, meet people where they are and kind of get them to the next level just based off of my past in education. And so I said, there's a way for me to connect all my skill sets here. So if I've transitioned and there's this certification to become a health coach that I can take, so let me do that. I certified. Now I can help people do exactly what I did in a similar process as what I did. And so once I made that connection, it kind of just like fell into place. So right now I still work as a health coach for a company, but I do coach people, individually on how to transition to being plant-based. And so it was a kind of a whirlwind of a few years of my life. I was still really searching, but all of what I learned all came together to be what I do now. And I really do love it. So
that's amazing. And that's great that you found that connection between what your gift is and the sustainability of someone's plant-based lifestyle. And I'm glad you could insert yourself into the health coaching sphere to just be more of service to people, because really we need it. So let's say I'm a new vegan and I'm approaching you like, Kiyyah, I need some help. Like, I want to be coached by you. Like, what are some pieces of advice that you would tell me to help me transition away from meat and towards a plant-based lifestyle if I'm totally new beginner?
Yeah, if you're totally new, number one is to add before you subtract. So what a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I tried it for a week and I eliminated everything and I ate salads all day. And because they subtracted so much from their diet, they didn't get enough nutrition. And that is what leads you to feeling hangry or feeling, like I really just can't do this, or I'm never satiated or satisfied. And, that's the feeling that a lot of people approach with. And so for me, I'm always like, first, let's add in vegetables. Let's get you used to eating vegetables. Let's add in, try different stuff, any type of veggie that is available, try it, taste it, cook it in different methods. Like you got to add stuff in first to know that there's a plethora of things that you can eat. Because if you look at how most of us eat the standard American diet, most of us ate veggies as a side. So it doesn't feel like there's a lot of, vegetables off the top of your head that even can be filling for you. You're probably like, okay, growing up, I ate green beans, I ate broccoli, I ate carrots. Yeah, if you only have a concept of those 3 vegetables and you're trying to go plant-based, you're like, there's nothing I can eat. When in reality, there's, hundreds of thousands of different options of what you can eat. So I always tell people that first, like, let's get to experimenting with all these different fruits and veggies that are available to you. And once you feel comfortable loading your plate up with them, eating as much of them as possible, you'll naturally start to crowd out those other things. So the second step will be, okay, what is something that you don't eat very much of that you can easily eliminate, or will be the easiest to eliminate? So for me, when I was transitioning, I didn't eat a lot of beef. Beef came across my plate maybe once a month or so. So once I got to the point where I recognized that I wasn't eating it that often, I said, well, I just don't really need it anymore. So let me just try to say, like, let me try to put this boundary up that I'm not eating beef anymore. And gave myself a couple months to enforce that and to really get comfortable with it. And then I started with the next food group. Okay, what else do I not eat a lot of? I don't really eat a lot of chicken. I ate Chick-fil-A, and I think that was probably the hardest thing out of chicken for me to give up. But I decided, okay, well, I'll start by reducing the amount of Chick-fil-A I eat. Or if I go, I'm gonna have the French fries and not get the chicken. And so slowly but surely, I was like, okay, well, I actually don't need that either. Eliminate that. And so it takes time for me, and I usually coach people over time versus like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and go vegan. Because I find that slow elimination allows them to feel doable. It feels doable. And then another way to do it is just to pick days of the week. So, we see a lot of Meatless Monday posts. I like Meatless Monday. Try one day a week and decide, like, on Mondays, I'm just not going to eat meat. I'm going to try recipes that do not include meat. And from there, you might move it to 2 days a week. And from there, you may move it to 3 days a week. Or from there, you may just get to 5 days a week and stop there and say, on the weekends, I'm going to eat, some animals. And then during the week, I'm going to, fast from animals. So whatever balance works for you, find that and then allow it to kind of sink in and settle in. I think a lot of times when we're talking about behavior change, we have to realize that it's a process. It's not something that happens, over 5-10 minutes or, even 5 or 10 days. It might take a year before you're like, okay, I'm completely 100% ready to give up all of these food groups. So I always encourage people to be okay with that transition process and to not worry so much about labeling themselves yet as a vegan. Like, don't go around telling the world you're a vegan if you want to have the space to still, have a piece of fish once in a while. You don't have to worry about that. Just do what feels best for you in the timing that feels best for you until you arrive at the point where you're comfortable with that title. And if you never get comfortable, that's okay too. But even if you're eating 90% plant-based, you're gonna live longer. Like, I try to tell people that too. Like, even if you get to this point where you're like almost there and, you go to grandma's house once a year and eat turkey, like, I'm still gonna be rooting for your intestines and your heart because they're still gonna be a lot happier. So I think it's just all about embracing the change with an open mind and an open heart and being comfortable in giving yourself that grace to figure things out as you go, instead of feeling like you have to be perfect. Because I think in the world that we live in, and even in the vegan community, a lot of it feels like if I'm not perfect, then I'm going to be attacked for not being a real vegan. And I don't think that matters. It really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is people's ability to achieve the goal that they want for their own lives. So that's my biggest advice. That was a lot of advice, but I hope that helps someone.
No, it's beautiful. And I really think a lot of people are going to love just knowing that they can be kind to themselves. I really want that to be a message in this particular interview, is that we just want to make sure that, like, however you vegan or plant-based, like, that's cool, homie, like, do you, and just get to where you'd like to go at your own pace, at your own level. So that's awesome. But I'm also thinking, you and I are very fortunate. You're in Atlanta. I'm in a city in Colorado where I have lots of access to healthy, fresh produce. We're not kind of far away from food. Can you talk to me about where you get your food from? And maybe if I'm someone that doesn't live in Atlanta with great food options, maybe some things that I can do as well.
Absolutely. So a lot of what I've dealt with, especially with like family and friends, is that access point. A lot of people are confused as to like, well, where do I buy vegan food because I don't have a Whole Foods near me? And I tell people all the time, I go to the regular grocery store. And I live in a part of Atlanta that's, more people of color, and the grocery store isn't the best grocery store. Like, I don't live near, kind of a gentrified area where the best grocery stores are. I go down the street to the regular store and I purchase what fits with my lifestyle. So I do encourage people to kind of be open-minded to the fact that there's no one place to shop for quote unquote plant-based or vegan foods. those are at every store in all different shapes, forms, variety, everything. Yes, the produce section in certain stores are going to look different. And so sometimes you will find that, okay, the produce isn't as fresh, or, you know, there's not a ton of variety there. And so I encourage people at that point to go to the frozen produce section, find frozen fruits, find frozen veggies, because they're usually picked and frozen when they're ripe. And so they're still gonna hold a lot of nutrition, and they're gonna be better for you and your budget and your wallet because they're frozen. And so they last a really, really long time, and you can kind of just pull them out when you need to. So like last night I had roasted cauliflower and roasted okra, and the okra was straight from a bag. Like, pop that thing open, season it up, throw it in a pan, roast it, and it's all good. So it doesn't, I don't want people to think that being plant-based means being like perfectly plant-based either, because frozen fruits and veggies they're quick, you know, like we live in a busy world. So having access also means having access to things that are faster. And those options really do come in handy. Another thing is just being in the bulk section. So having dried beans, having brown rice, having quinoa, having things that are going to sit in your pantry and last, oatmeal. I tell people all the time, like, you can easily survive off of very little money and very little, you know, fancy vegan things. Like, again, I'll give an example. The other day, I had some brown rice in my pantry. I made that. I had some green peas in the freezer, made those. A couple sweet potatoes, baked those off. And, you know, it doesn't have to feel like it has to be this grand, you know, plant-based meal. It's like food is nourishment to our bodies. Food is energy. Food is fuel. And so it doesn't always have to feel like, you know, I'm going out of my way to make this like grand thing. Sometimes I just eat to eat, you know, like not living to eat, I'm eating to live. And so that's something that we have to kind of learn to embrace, because there are options. There are a lot of options. Even Walmart, I tell people all the time, if you're in a small town and like the closest store to you is a Walmart, you have options. Walmart sells like almond milk, Walmart sells oatmeal, Walmart sells a lot of cereals that might be plant-based. Of course, beans and rice are going to be the staples. Those are the staples in my diet, is beans and rice. And I just kind of season it differently and add my fresh produce, you know, grab some frozen spinach. You can throw it in a sauce. You can throw it in a soup. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be as difficult as a lot of us might see it as or perceive it as. It gets easier over time, definitely.
Wow, you really touched on something important, which is that you can get this food anywhere. And actually, way back when we were eating meat or not eating vegan, we would pass by all these produce, you know, stands, and pass by Walmart's, you know, produce section and not even think about it. So now it's almost like we're retraining our eyes to see fruits, vegetables as things that we want to consume, not just a side, but it's accessible really in almost any grocery store. And I just love that you put that out there. But for those of us who are Black, who come from cultural backgrounds, you know, we have cultural foods.
Yes.
And for some of us, macaroni and cheese, grits with shrimp, you know, crab cakes, you know, collards with bacon, these are really important, not just foods that we think are tasty, but cultural foods. And now that we have the holidays, you know, coming up, we have a lot of people expecting us to come out with meat-based or animal-based products, and we're not really there right now. So what would you recommend for those of us who come from like cultural backgrounds, where we're Black folk or we're people of color, and we just need to find a way to, you know, get our family into it? You know, what would you recommend for those of us on how to just get our family into that vegan lifestyle during our cultural food seasons?
Yeah, number one is to not tell your family what you made. So we hosted Thanksgiving a couple of years ago here in Atlanta, and my family came down from North Carolina. And my mom is really open to my lifestyle. And so my mom was like, well, you just make some stuff for you and we'll just put it out, and, you know, you fix your plate, make sure you get what you need, and then the rest of the food is just there, you know? And so I just paid attention to what people were putting on their plates. And it was really funny to me to see my family, oh, this is so good. Oh my God, this is, who made the potato salad? I'm like, oh, I made it. And they're like, this is good. And in the back of my head, I'm like, y'all don't even know that that's vegan. Like, so I think, it takes a little bit of trickery in that way, but there have been a lot of times where I've been the one to expose my family to things in ways that they didn't know. Like the cornbread dressing that I made, like you can make it all vegan. It's all very doable. It doesn't take a lot of time, effort, energy to veganize a recipe. And so just putting it out there and letting them taste it, and then on the back end being like, hey guys, did you know? The same with greens. Like you can put some liquid smoke in some greens and they'll have that same smoky flavor, and you'll save on the sodium and the saturated fat, and everybody's happy. So there are definitely ways to do it. And I don't want people to feel so intimidated, because the whole point of holidays is about being present with your friends and your family. I think as a culture, as a people, we have placed a really, really high emphasis on food. And food is meant to be shared and it's meant to be enjoyed, and I'm not taking that away. But I also think that if we sit and we pray over our food and we say it's supposed to go for the nourishment of our bodies, I think we should think a little bit more critically about what that means, and also start to actually enact that and start to take steps to make sure that the food is nourishing our bodies versus just asking for that to be the case and still feeding our bodies with stuff that we know deep down isn't nourishing. So there are millions of ways to cook fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes that are going to still taste good. And, it doesn't really matter that it's vegan or not. Like sometimes I'm just like, y'all, let's take the labels off of everything. Let's cook food and eat good food. Despite, what plant it came from. Like you're going to like it. So trust me, just trust me. I'm going to cook for you. You're going to like it. We're all good. So I think that's kind of, you just have to have fun with it. You have to let food be fun. Let's just have fun with it. Let's veganize it and have a good Thanksgiving.
I love that sneak attack. Like, I'm not going to tell you there's vegan butter in here, but you just got to enjoy it. That works. And then people want to know your recipe, and then they're like, this was vegan. So good opportunity with the sneak attack. Just get it all in there. So now I know you. Now I know that you're a health coach. I know what steps I can take. But maybe I want to know a little bit more about maybe what you struggle with as a vegan or a plant-based person. Are there things in your life or access or people or situations that you're just still kind of struggling with as a plant-based eater? And just kind of talk about a little bit more about your personal struggles with it.
Absolutely. I would number one say social situations. So it's really easy to be plant-based or vegan at your home because you have control over your environment, you have control over what's in your fridge, you have control over, what's going on. Like this is your zone. When you take yourself out of your zone, then you're going to face uncertainties. And that's when, it gets a lot harder to navigate. So what I find is, if I'm going out of town to visit someone, for example, it almost feels like, oh, let me send them a grocery list, or let me double check and make sure they have something I can eat. Or, if I'm going to a wedding, okay, well, let me make sure I eat before I go. Or if I know it's a day where I'm going to be out and about and all over the place, I have to look at, okay, what part of town am I going to be in? What restaurant might I be able to stop at and get something? Because it's not like it's 100% mainstream now. So we're finding more and more opportunities to eat plant-based out, but it's not 100%. So you might get caught in a situation very easily and feel very uncomfortable where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm with this whole group of people. They all want to go to McDonald's. What am I going to eat, And so I think that's where it gets a little tricky and a little bit more difficult. And I think being grounded in your belief system about why you did what you did or why you made the transition is going to be the most important thing, because sometimes you're going to have to face people and say like, well, this is my belief and this is why I stand by it. And you have your beliefs and you stand by them. And so, I'm asking you to not judge anything that I do, but allow me the space to do as I please, just as I allow you to do that. And so it does get uncomfortable. It's not always easy. I am a pro at reading menus in advance. So I promise that becomes a skill where it's like, okay, where are we going? What's the name of the restaurant? You go to Yelp, you go, Happy Cow, and see like if there's vegan options, or just go to the side dishes and read, oh, they got asparagus. Okay, they got sweet potatoes that I can get baked and tell them no butter, and I can, so you kind of have to do like additional work, and I think that's what's intimidating for some people, is that it does take additional work and additional time. And it's not always easy. It really isn't, but sometimes you make that sacrifice for it to be worth it. And I think that's where I've kind of gone through the struggle and have arrived at a point where I'm grounded in what I decided, and I'm okay with it. So
yeah, well said. Same deal. I struggle with that too. For the record, it never gets easy looking at menus and dealing with friends and family that aren't vegan. It's going to always feel like a hassle to them, but for you it's worth it. So I totally struggle with that too. And just to wrap it up, I want to ask a couple more questions before we tell people how they can find you. But one is, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you first went vegan?
One thing I know now is that I'm strong enough to do it. When I was first trying to transition, I would say, I can't ever do this. I don't think I'll ever be able to be that way, or I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. It was a lot of doubt surrounding this transition, even though I knew it was something that I wanted and my reasoning why was strong, I didn't know. And now that I've arrived at this point, it almost feels like I've been like this for a long time, because I'm so settled down into it. And so I know that I'm strong enough to accomplish a goal that I set for myself. And this goes with any type of change. It's not just about going plant-based or going vegan. Anytime you want to change and you're uncertain at the beginning, you almost have to project yourself into the future and say, like, my future self is going to be proud of the change that I'm making right now. And once you can switch your mindset over to that, and each day you can show up more and more as your future like self that you want to be, it gets a lot easier to become that. And when you arrive at that point, it doesn't feel as tough. So I would definitely speak to strength here, and just, having the willpower to say, this is something I want, I'm gonna do it. And once I've done it, it's done. And everybody can, it's not something that is only reserved for, non-people of color, white people. Sometimes I hear that from people of color, like, oh, eating healthy, that's like, that's those people's food. And that's just not the case. It's for us too. There's a documentary called The Invisible Vegan that speaks to being a person of color and being vegan and feeling like at some point in time, health was not for us. And we as a people have to reclaim health as our own, because our lives literally depend on it. So you can do it. We can all do it.
All facts. Great. And my final question to you is, what's been the biggest blessing in your life since going plant-based or vegan?
The biggest blessing in my life has been feeling better. I would just say that despite still having, health challenges or battles, with my health, I know that I would not be at the place of care for my own self if I had not made this transition. One thing that I think we forget about the standard American diet is that those foods are actually very addictive. They're highly addictive. And we start to lose ourselves in our addictions to foods. And making this transition helped me to reclaim my own power over what I put into my body, which makes me feel better in turn. And so me feeling better is worth every bit or amount of struggle or inconvenience or challenge that I face, because I'm not facing a lot of the same issues. I don't have skin issues anymore. I have energy. I feel better. I like, it radiates from me that I feel better. And I think that is worth it's worth every bit of the challenge. And it's worth stepping up to the challenge and challenging myself to say, like, there's better out here. And I know that you know it, you feel it. So go for it, go towards it, walk faster towards it, because we as a people are facing some of the worst statistics of diseases, even though we're moving in the direction of what we would say prosperity is. You know, how are we as a nation becoming more wealthy and yet we are getting sicker? And when you really start to ask that question and take it apart and get into what the standard American diet does to us, then you want to disconnect from it. You want to feel better. And so I feel so much better now. And I will always attest to, you know, this being a way of life that I think more people should be open to. Even if they can't go 100%, you know, like I said, even if you eat a piece of fried fish because grandma cooked it for you, you know, if you're hitting that 90% range of eating plant-based, I guarantee you will feel the difference.
Powerful words, Kiyyah. Thank you so much. Where can people find you on the internet? Website, IG, all that stuff.
Yep, my website is www.kiyahskitchen.com. So KIYYAHS kitchen.com. I'm on YouTube under my full name, Rukiyyah Khan. That's RUKIYYAH. Khan is KHAN. You can find me on Instagram at Kiyyahs_plant-based kitchen. You can find me on Twitter. I think I have a Twitter. I don't use Twitter very often. So, I mean, if you find me on there, hey girl, but I'm probably not going to be actually there. So yes, website and YouTube and Instagram.
Yay. Thank you, Kiyyah, for joining me on Afro Feminista Vegan's YouTube. And everyone follow her. She is such an inspiration. Book her, whatever you can do to engage with her stuff. She's just a wonderful person to have in your life. So for sure, enjoy that. And please follow us on Afro Feminista Vegan 1 on Instagram and Afro Feminista Vegan on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.